With consumers ditching their sedans for bigger and larger vehicles such as crossovers and SUVs, manufacturers have tried their level best to keep up with this demand. But in the end, we ourselves as consumers can't even keep up. We don't know what the difference is between a crossover and an SUV. But Audi have decided to make things simple for us with this vehicle behind me here. This is the all-new Q3 Sportback, and they call this car a CUV, which is a crossover utility vehicle. But what does that mean? Let's find out. The thing is, lines have become very blurred when it comes to the crossover segment. People even consider cars like a Renault Sandero Stepway as a crossover. And to us, that doesn't really make sense because that's a much smaller car. To us, when we think crossover, we think of the likes of a BMW X2, a Mini Countryman, a Mercedes-Benz GLA, and even the likes of a Volvo XC40. And this is exactly where this car operates in. But the difference between this car and those is what's at the back. The first thing you'll notice at the back of this car is the fact that it's got a sloping roofline. So for those of you who have been wondering, you've guessed right. It's yet another coupe SUV. It literally seems like every single week there's a new coupe SUV. But Audi instead calls this car a Sportback. And that literally means that they've lowered the roofline. As you can see, the car looks nice and sleek. But again, what they've done, they've also raised the rear. So what that also means is that you've got quite a pronounced rear diffuser, which to some may look very good, but to others it may look like a bit too much. But one thing I do like is the stance of this car. So as you can see, the way the roofline is designed, it really creates these nice pronounced quattro blisters, giving this car a more aggressive stance. Oh, before I forget, let's talk about the boot. The one thing that we really need to commend Audi on is the fact that they've kept the boot space the same as that you'd find in a normal Q3. So the 530 litres you can expect from that car is exactly what you get here. The only difference comes in is when I put the seats down. That's where the normal Q3 has slightly more space. But looking at this boot right now, I'm sure we can all agree that there's tons of space in this car. One thing I do like is that you've got a 12-volt socket over here, you've also got a few tethering points, and you've got a spare wheel instead of a tire puncture repair kit. So it's all good and well that they've got the boot space right, but we all know that many coupe SUVs generally compromise the rear occupant's seating position when it comes to headroom. So let's find out if they've got that right. So jumping in the back of this Q3 Sportback, the first thing we need to speak about is headroom. And if you look here, my head is actually quite close to the roof. The only problem is many people are taller than me. I'm only 5'7", so if you're even slightly taller, you might find that your head would start to crane, which is not a particularly good thing in a car like this. But one thing that is commendable is the legroom. I've got the front seat in my normal driving position and there's plenty space for myself. So even if I was slightly bigger, I'm sure I'd fit in here quite comfortably. Up front, you automatically recognize where you are. This is standard Q3, which is not a bad place to be in at all. As we can expect from Audi, it's a very high quality cabin. But the big talking point we want to speak about in this car is the fact that it's got 194,000 Rand worth of options. But I'm not going to bore you going through the entire list, but what I do have here is a handy piece of paper that Audi have given us and laminated it for us, listing all the options. And the big ones we want to speak about is what you're looking at right here, which is the technology package. And that gives you the MMI Navigation Plus, it gives you the wonderful Audi Virtual Cockpit, it gives you Audi Connect, and of course, some ambient lighting. Interestingly, you've got 30 colors to choose from, so they say you can have literally a color a day, which I think is a bit gimmicky, but hey, some people will like that. Another option fitted to this car is the comfort package, which will cost you 22,580 Rand. And that gives you 4-way lumbar support in the front seats. It also gives you power front seats, so I can do this. And it also heats up your seats, so for those chilly winter mornings, your bottom can stay warm. And lastly, this car also has the S-Line interior package, which gives you these lovely seats that are a combination of leather and Alcantara. One very smart thing Audi has done, they've put the Alcantara on the outer side of the seats because that's where these seats tend to wear over time. One option that I do think is not very necessary is the sunroof that you see here, because it costs a whole 20,000 Rand for this panoramic roof. I would rather have what they fitted in this car, which is the Bang & Olufsen sound system. And when I tell you that this is one of the best systems out there, it truly does exactly what the name says. It bangs. So what's on offer in this new Audi Q3 Sportback? Well, firstly, you've got the 35 TFSI, which is what starts you off in the range. And that is powered by a 1.4 turbo producing 110 kilowatts and 250 Newton meters of torque. And then you get what we're currently in, which is the 2-liter turbo variant called the 40 TFSI, and that produces 132 kilowatts and 320 Newton meters of torque. And first impressions, the car does react in the same way you would expect an Audi Q3 with this engine to react. It's not slow, it's not down on power, it's got just enough for you to get going, but there are some moments when I wish I just had that much more. What is quite interesting about this variant is that they do offer the sport suspension as standard because they want you to have a bit more of a dynamic feel on the road. And even in its dynamic setting, I must say that the car's never compromised. It never feels too hard on the road, and it never feels too bumpy, even on a rippled surface such as we're on right now. It feels like how any other Audi feels, which is premium, it's classy, and it's still very comfortable. Overall, I must say that the Q3 Sportback is a good addition in the Audi range. Audi went for a long period of time in this country without many new products, but it seems like all the new products that are coming out right now are very impressive. But it all boils down to price. And this is where the Q3 Sportback is quite an interesting car. So for the base 35 TFSI, you're going to look at 693,000 Rand. And for this car right here, you're looking at 737,000 Rand. The only issue is, if you are too heavy on that options list, you are going to touch the R1 million mark, which I think is a lot of money.